Welcome back to part 2. We're going to sew up those satin shirts today.
Well, friends, it's been so long since I've been up here. I'm not even sure what I've already recorded for this project. I took a break from it for like 5 days because of moving my son and other things. So we're going to go over and sew because that's where I've got everything cut to, and I'm hoping I filmed all the stuff up to that point. We'll find out. Okay. We're ready to sew. I'm going to be making 4 shirts, but in this video, the tutorial is going to be on the blue. So we're going to start with darts. We have darts in the back shoulder and in the bust line, so we're going to go ahead and just sew our darts in. If you've not done a dart, I'm going to put a link below to my dart tutorial so you can see exactly how to do a dart. If you need a dart tutorial, click the link below. Title card up here so you can see what you're looking for, but it's a very short video that'll take you through darts. So we're going to do all of our darts real quick. Normally, if the colors are close, I would just do all darts on all 4 shirts and kind of do it assembly line style, but because I have such dramatic color change from blue to peach to silver, etc., I will make each shirt individually this time. So let's do our darts real quick. Also, I'm sewing in satin, so let's start with a nice, fresh, beautiful new needle. We don't want to have any snags in our fabric, and I'm going to take a little scrap. It's not even threaded up, I just want to run it through and see how this needle looks. I do change my needles quite often. Can you see the little holes it made? This is what happens with satin. The holes don't always heal real well. Sometimes you can press it, and sometimes they stay. For this project, I'm probably going to be doing a lot more clipping and less pinning because the satin, it heals pretty well, but I don't want to leave any permanent holes that can't be taken care of later. So I'm going to be doing clipping whenever possible, just for the protection of the fabric. My glasses. You can tell I'm discombobulated because I have no thread in my sewing machine, and I decided to put in a dart. I just sewed a sample to see how the needle was. I know I have no thread. I would like to say to you that I find that this fabric water spots very easily, and it had little spots that I think came from the dryer sheet early on that made me rewash the fabric. Do not sneeze on your fabric. Do not cough on your fabric. Don't spill anything on it. It will watermark. It just will. But it's pretty common for polyester satin to be pretty easily spotted. And this one is very much that way. All right, so here's our little back darts. And now I'm going to do the front darts. These are deep darts in the front. Look at this dart. Look at how much dart you have. But it fits nicely. Lovely. And you can tell by the way this is sewn that the dart is pressed down because of the pattern making. It makes it very easy to tell. Okay, we have darts. Look at that, shape so pretty around the bust line. Now that that's done, because I stole my thread from my serger, I'm going to go ahead and stitch around my interfacing. I'm going to do the little interfacing trick to make it nice and soft because I don't want a lot shadowing through. So I'm going to take right side of my facing and right side of my interfacing and lay them on top of each other. Now you can sew your whole interfacing together first if you want to. I'm not as worried about my shoulder seams as I am the hemline. We're going to lay these on top of each other, and we're going to just sew around the hemline only, 3/8 of an inch. I've done this before, this little trick. This is fusible interfacing, so right sides together, sewing around the hemline of both facings. It can be 1/4 inch, it can be 3/8. I think they allow for 3/8 in this. So here's my interfacing. I have right side of the facing to the right side of the interfacing. Here's my little nubs. I'm sewing just the hemline around. This is my favorite little interfacing trick. We're going to do that for both interfacings. So now I'm going to take my front one, right sides together with the facing to interfacing. I'm putting the satin down and the facing of the interfacing on top. And I run it through the machine. So the satin is next to the feed dogs. Again, only going around the hemline. All right, let's go to the ironing board and finish these off. Now you don't necessarily have to do this, but I'm going to because of what I'm working with. I'm trimming away a little bit of the excess of the interfacing just in the seam allowance first, and then I'm going to make a few little clips along this curve because it is one that is wider on the outside than the inside, and I'm turning it to the inside, so I want the little clips to make everything pull in. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm also going to trim off this point so that it'll fold up. Okay, so now I flipped it around so that here's the sticky side and here is the wrong side, and I'm going to carefully press this down, and now all of these raw seam edges are caught inside the interfacing and the facing, and it'll look like this. It'll be nice and smooth. I'm doing the same for this side. All right, so here's my back facing. There's this pretty little hemline. This is the wrong side. You can come back if you want to and top stitch this, or you can just leave it like that. Here's my front facing before turning. You see I've trimmed out my little point. And here is the front facing. This is so flat and thin, which will help keep it from shadowing through. Here's the back side of the facing. So we've got that prepped. Now let's iron in our darts. So here's option 2 when you are doing the little interfacing trick where we are self-enclosing our interfacing. You can open it up and sew your seams across before pressing. So I'm going to do that real quick and then show you how it looks. So this is it under the foot. We're just getting it perfectly lined up on our 3/8 inch of an seam allowance. I've sewed up to my seam, and now I'm going to sink my needle and readjust this so that these line up, and then continue my stitching. And I'm not worried if they're off a little bit. This is the interfacing part where we can even it up. Now I haven't done any trimming or grading on the inside yet, so here's the inside. It's round, so it gets nice. So that's what it looks like in there. I'm going to finger press it, and then this will come around and we will press it this way, and you can see how it's finished off perfectly on both sides and ready to go in. So I'm going to go ahead and do the other side and put it in the neckline. Another thing to think about when you're doing this is you can offset or turn your seam allowances going opposite directions, and it just makes it smoother and less bulky right here where all of those seams come together, so that when you flip it around it'll be a lot smoother. Okay, so this is how it looks if we do it that method, and you can see how all the seam allowances are completely enclosed. The edge is perfectly finished. There's no top stitching, though. If you wanted to, you definitely could come around and top stitch this edge. That's, you know, another option for you. So this is how it looks. All right, so there are my darts pressed, and as much as possible, I'm pressing from the wrong side, doing as little as possible to get the iron on the right side of the satin. So we do not want this dart to shadow through on the bottom. We don't want to press this edge through to the outer side. So we're going to lay it like this first and give this seam a good press. And also crease the dart really well. And then when we open it up, if we need to, we can press again along this line, being careful not to hit this bottom edge. If you press along this bottom edge, you will demarcate your satin. So we want to be really cautious of that. So we have lovely darts at the shoulder and at the bust line, and we're ready to put our shirt together along the shoulder line. My serger's all threaded up. I stole that. I had to steal one of my cones to do the darts, so I put it back because I used all of the thread I had on the bottom. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I had to steal a cone and put it back. So I have just done a test scramble, took a scrap to make a sample, and checked to make sure that I like the way it looks, that the stitch is good. I pulled this out of my trash pile, and everything's good. It is exactly at 1/4 of an inch. Now I could adjust my knife width and make it 3/8 to make it wider. If I wanted to, there's a lot of things I could do, or I could just take off a little tiny bit at the serger and leave it with 1/4 inch seam allowances, because this has 3/8 inch seam allowances in it. If you don't have an overlock and you're at the sewing machine, just sew it with a straight stitch at 3/8 and come back and zigzag those edges. It's pretty narrow to do a mock French. It would be even harder to do a French. So I probably would do a mock French where you fold them in and stitch that edge if you wanted to, but a zigzag would also work. Overlocking is the best. There are overlock stitches on a lot of sewing machines, so you just have to look for one that kind of looks like an overlock. It looks like this, and then you can trim or do it along the edge. There's lots of ways, but you do want to finish your seam allowance on satin because satin frays. So now that we're done that, we're going to just put right sides together. The dart on the shoulder presses towards the neck. So we want to make sure you get your darts pressed the right direction. So at this point, I'm going to use my clips to kind of clip it together. And I need to decide if I want to sew the sleeve in flat or do a set-in sleeve. I think I'm going to do a set-in sleeve for this one because it's a sort of a high and tight sleeve, and I think it'll just lay prettier. So I'm going to go ahead and do my side seams and my shoulder seams. The other thing, if you're overlocking, is I usually put the top or the front on top, because then the right side of the overlock stitch is the side that you will see when you press your garment. That's me being super fussy. Now on one side you're going with the direction of the dart, and the other side you're going against it, so you're going to have to watch that you don't flip your dart up when stitching this other side, if you're being careful about the direction of your overlock stitch. If you're not being careful, you can sew them both from underarm down to hem. All right. This is together. I'm going to go ahead and open it up, and I'm going to overlock around the hemline. There's lots of ways you can do the hem. You can roll it twice, etc. I'm going to turn up and stitch. It's easiest. It's also nice and soft and flat, and I think that's just what I'm going to do. So I'm going to go ahead and serge around my hem while I'm at the overlock, and then I'm going to go ahead and put my sleeve together and my facings. It goes pretty fast once we're past darts. All right, so we've serged together an entire shirt, and I've serged around the hem, not pressed yet. I'm going to go ahead and serge my facing together. Okay, so we're going to serge that together. And I'm going to go ahead and do the underarm of both sleeves and around the hem of both sleeves. So we're going to just keep on overlocking for a few minutes here. Then gently press everything. So back in a little bit after doing all of these other overlock things. If you're struggling like this satin, when I go to put it in, they want to separate from each other, go ahead and stick a clip on somewhere. You can also, like if you're going to pin in the facing where it's not going to show on the outside anyway. I have a little piece of interfacing that crept past my fashion fabric. I'm going to trim that away so I get an accurate seam line. I've got a facing. Now, I'm going to move my coaster over to lay my scissors on so they don't make so much noise when I lay them down. Now we're going to do the sleeves. I'm going to do the underarm first, then I'm going to go around the bottom of the hem. Slippy sliding. Okay, now that I've got the underarm, I'm going to open this up. I still didn't lay it on my little coaster. Open this up and I'm going to go around the hemline so that that's all done. I'm trying to get most of this easy serging stuff done, and then we'll be ready to add the facing and the sleeve. Pressing first, of course, then adding the facing of the sleeve. Not cutting anything off when I'm going around the hemlines. Making sure to press the seam the correct direction before I overlock over it. I'm also opening it up so that I have the right side towards where I can see it, so that the right side of the stitching is on the right side of the fabric, just so it's prettier when I turn it back to actually make the hem. We're now ready to do a quick and gentle press over at the ironing board. I'm going to press all of my seams the direction they need to go. I'm going to press up my hems. But before I do that, I can go ahead and put in my facing. We're going to do right sides together. If you want to, because of how we did this the edge stitch, if you want to, you can do some extra stitching, like stitch down your serging, things like that if you need to, or if you want to just make everything secure. You can also put the whole facing together and then do that edge thing so that even your little neck seams, your shoulder seams are enclosed in it and protected. I just really am, my whole goal in doing it the way I did was so that it is not going to shadow through a lot to the front, because it's satin and the facing is going to kind of want to shadow through. So I'm going to clip down right sides together, starting at the shoulders. Make sure your seam allowances are pushed towards the back at the shoulder, so your shoulder seam allowance go towards the back. I'm going to line those up with each other and clip it and clip it. The shirt is going to be a lot softer than the facing because the facing has the interfacing, which makes it nice and stiff and stable, while the shirt has all kinds of soft fluidity. So we're going to be sewing this with the shirt on the next to the feed dogs and the facing up towards the needle side. And what that does is it allows the feed dogs to ease in any movement between the two layers, because there will be a little movement. So when I hold this up, you can see that it looks like the shirt's a little bigger. It's going to be hard to tell, but it looks like the shirt's a little bigger, and it is, because when we fused the interfacing to the facing, it just makes it stable, and it kind of makes it appear smaller. It's not truly smaller, but it does feel like it is, because it's just more stable, where we have a little bit of movement and stretch and ease, where there's bias like along the front of that neckline that's so curvy. So I'm going to put in a few extra pins to make it nice and neat. Now, you can serge this or you can sew it. I want to sew it. I should have made, you know what I should have done? If I was thinking, I would have pulled off that thread and made a second bobbin and put the bobbin on the top. That's what I often do. I'm such a ding-a-ling. Why didn't I do that? Okay, let's get this clipped. I am going to sew this, press it and turn it, and clip it and all the things. So when I go to the ironing board, I got lots of ironing to do, lots of pressing to do technically. Everything pretty happy. What we do not want when we're putting this together, we do not want any little pleats or foldovers on the right side garment that shows. So if you look along the neckline edge and you get a little pleat where the facing is attached, when you go to flip it over, no bueno, we don't want that. So I'm trying to decide, what should I do? You know what I should do? I should go ahead and put the sleeve in because it's the last thing I need to serge, and then worry about the facing. I was gonna do the facing first. It's already clipped in, but nope, I'm gonna do the sleeve next. I'm gonna press my sleeve real quick. I wanna press that side seam, and I'm gonna press the side seam on my shirt. So I'm gonna go do a little pressing. We'll be back to clip in the sleeves. All right, so this is the sleeve clipped in there. If you need to run a little basting line in the cap of the sleeve, if you have some ease, I have no issues. It's going in perfectly just the way it is, but you may need to. When I sew this in, I'm going to have the sleeve towards the feed dogs and the shirt up, and that just helps if there's any extra ease in that sleeve. The feed dogs take care of it for us. I'm just going to go around the circle. I'm going to serge both sleeves in. I've already got this ready to go. Once I get the sleeve in, I'm gonna steal a cone, put it in my needle, and then everything that's left will be done at the sewing machine. If you have it, remove your tray table and use your free arm for putting in the sleeves. So here I am putting in the sleeve. I've got the free arm, so it's going around the circle nice and easy. You can see how it fits the free arm. Makes it so much easier to get a sleeve in. Make sure you remove those clips or pins as you go, because the knife is engaged. You can see it going up and down. Once you've gone around, check your sleeve side. Make sure you don't have any little pleats or foldovers. It should go in nice and smooth. It is a set-in sleeve. You can see how mine has, how nice and smooth it is. Okay, I'm going to do the other one. Okay, we are all in with our sleeves. We've got nice little sleeves in, and I've got my facing clipped on, so I'm just going to go all the way around the facing, and then we're going to turn up hems, stitch in our hems, and give everything a nice gentle pressing. I am noticing with the satin, when pressing, it's best to press from the wrong side. I'm noticing if your iron is even the slightest bit dirty or has anything on it, it sticks to the satin, which is miserable. So use a press cloth, press from the wrong side, do all the things to protect your satin. Starting in the back, on the facing, I have the facing side up, the shirt side down. Now I'm sewing to the center peak. So as I sew to this peak here, I'm going to get it as flat as I can and lined up. And we're going to sew up to our peak, sink our needle, and rotate it, and that will keep that nice and sharp in there. And then continue around my circle. Now, because it was a circle, I crossed where I started, so I crossed my stitches, and that's the same as if I had back stitched. I have a facing attached. I'm going to walk around it with my eyeballs. I'm going to look all the way around, make sure I didn't get a pleat anywhere. I did not. So we are going to now clip this little V in the front, which you've seen me do lots of times. And we're going to clip up to, but not through that stitching. So that's what the clip in the front will be. That will release that. And then along this neckline, we're going to do some more little clips just along where it's curvy, especially in the back. And those clips will help it turn nicely for pressing, and then we're going to do a little understitching along that facing to keep it from wanting to roll to the outside. I'm also going to probably tack it at the shoulder seam to help keep it, while I'm doing this, I can get my extra threads out of the way. That'll keep it from wanting to flip around to the front side. All right, we are ready to go to the ironing board and give this a press. So now I can flip my facing around to the inside, and give it a press, and what I want to do is the edge stitch where I'm going to stitch my seam allowance to my facing. So let me show you a little close-up of that. So I'm going to take my seam allowance and push them towards the facing side. Here's my shirt, here's my facing. We've done this a lot. We want to make sure that that seam allowance is on the correct side, and we're going to stitch all the way around. I'm going to start up here in the shoulder, not in the front. Make sure we don't have any shirt caught inside there. We're stitching on the facing side, right next to our stitching line. Now I didn't back stitch, and you can, but I'm going to be going around the circle, so I will be catching it or crossing it here in a bit. Let me get this thread out of the way. There we go. So my seam allowance is on this side. So when I stitch this to the facing, the seam allowance is getting caught. And you can see how close to that edge I'm stitching. But what happens is that will help keep it, keep that facing turned to the wrong side, so it doesn't want to keep flipping out and peeking through. All right, we've got that stitched down. You can also go ahead and put a tag on this if you want to, in your facing side. So now all that's left is hem, so I'm just going to flip it around. I am going to tack down this facing to the little shoulder seams. That also helps keep it from wanting to flip around. A good pressing makes a difference too. But that way it will keep it nice and smooth. Oh yeah, that looks so pretty. What pretty fabric. Okay, we're ready for hems. So we're going to, again, do a light pressing. I'm going to press up my hems and just top stitch in the hems for both the sleeve and the hem at the bottom, all the way around. Very, very basic. For the hem of the bottom, I'm only going to be turning up about 3/8 of an inch and just going all the way around it. The sleeve, I'm turning up about 1 inch and stitching at about 3/4. And that's it. We're ready to go. I'm going to also go ahead and tack this facing while I'm sitting here. Let's get that done. Okay, I have a question for all of you, especially if you're sort of my age. Did you or do you call little tops that you wear under something else, like under a jacket or that's meant to be worn underneath, a very basic, simple little top? Did you call it a shell? All my life, I've called little tops like this a shell. You wear a shell underneath. A lot of times I think a shell was sleeveless, but even a little short sleeve, we just called it a shell. And I mentioned that to my daughter. I said, I'm going to make some shells for Aunt Sandy, and she literally was like, what's a shell? Like a seashell? And I thought, you know, that obviously is not a term used in fashion, or at least not one that is getting passed down. I'm curious, is that what you guys called it? Was that just me in my group? I'd like to know. Let me know what you called the little tops you wore under other things. All right, we're going to go ahead and put our hems in, and then I'm going to go put this on the dress form so you can see how it looks. And then I'm going to make 3 more. Okay, it would look better to have an arm in that sleeve to get it to lay right, but you can see the neckline was raised up quite a bit. It was just way too low on my sister. The bust line on this, on my plus-sized form, it's actually pretty close. It's just a little bit high, but this form is bigger than both my sister and I. This has a soft, fuller hem. This is not fitted along the hemline. I did bring it in 2 inches to make it a little bit more fitted along that hem. Isn't that pretty? Let's turn her around and look at the back. Look at those lovely back darts. The one thing about the satin is it does crease. It always needs a little press, but it sure lays pretty, and it goes together really well. I really like the pattern a lot. I'm quite pleased. I'll be taking it to my sister this week, and we'll see how it fits.
I'll be taking it to my sister this week and we'll see what she thinks.
So after another quick fitting, we have decided to take it in even a little bit more, starting from the underarm and bringing it in towards the hemline. It's just a little too A-line and swingy at the hemline for her, and we're going to add a little breast pocket as well. I'll see you next week for another fun video.